All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Ali Rezai. I'm the President and CEO of Shaw Lab Group. I am honored to be your host today, and we have with ourselves Lino R.D.T, our implant specialist, who's gonna have a lecture today on dental implants and labs perspective. Next slide, please. So Shaw Lab Group have been serving Canadian dentists, North American dentists for over 75 years. We are a group of full service conventional and digital dental labs, highly experienced in fixed, removables, and ortho products. In fact, we have a line of clear aligners called Perfect Smile, 100% designed and manufactured in Canada. We have 5 locations in Brampton, Kingston, London, Ottawa, and Toronto to serve you all as good as possible. Next slide. So I wanted to introduce Al. Al started working as a dental technician at the age of 16. He's been a dental technician 42 years. He's from Portugal. He's been practicing this as long as I've been live. Al moved to Canada at the age of 18. He started working as a technician right away in 2 different labs. He joined Shaw Lab Group in 1994, and he's been with us ever since, and we are so proud to have him. Al became an RDT in 1990, so he's celebrating 30 years of being an RDT. Al has been in implants entire his career and has developed very unique procedures and tools that you will see in this webinar today. In fact, for those who know me, I like to go to the lab here and there, and I always end up sitting with Al and discussing all of the great things that he has done for us and continues to do for all the dental community. Fun fact about Al, dental technician runs in the family. Al's wife is the team lead at ORC Ontario, Faculty of Dentistry, University of Toronto. His son is our lab manager in Toronto lab. We are extremely proud of him too. His daughter-in-law, Mike's wife, is a dental technician at Internal Dental Lab, University of Toronto. So it runs in the family. When Al is not restoring the joy of eating and smiling, he enjoys his motorcycles. He's got 2 of them. He's a very fun guy. He does paintballing and bowling in an amateur league. So before I hand it over to Al for the webinar tonight, couple of things. Al has many slides, great slides. All the slides are numbered. If you have a question about any slides, write the number of slide during the question and answer. You can refer to the number of slide and Al can go back and take a look at it, answer all your questions. At the end of this webinar, we're gonna have a discount code and we're gonna also stay for question and answer as long as required. Before I give it to Al, I'm just gonna send a poll out with 2 questions. I'd like to see the answers. If you are kind enough, please answer both questions. Question number 1, have you placed implants? Question number 2, have you worked with us before? So I'll wait, I'll launch the poll right now and give it a minute for the answers to come in. I appreciate the answers. We still have answers coming. 38 seconds, 40 seconds. All right, I'm gonna end the poll and I'm gonna share the results. So we have 37% that say they have never placed implants. So you know that. We have 40% that have placed implants, but just a few. We have 23% that have placed many implants during their career. Second question, we have 49% that yes, I love Shaw, you worked with us, and 51% have not worked with us. So we hope at the end of this webinar, you change your mind and you contact us and let us help you. Thank you so much. Al, over to you.
Thank you, Ali, for the lovely introduction. And I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. And I just need to remove Ali.
Yes.
Give me a second. Can you remove, this is on front of my slide.
Just click close it yourself. I think you can close it yourself.
No, it doesn't. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, so we'll start, sorry about this. So we start with the ideal position for dental implants. So the next slide is this. So it starts with the team work. So patient, restorative dentist, oral surgeon, and dental technologist, and dental assistant. So patient's options, of course, is low cost and high cost. So you need to find out from the patient and see what can the patient afford. So why we need to know both sides. So on this case, the doctor wants to close mesial and distal spaces. So yes, we did restore it, but is this the proper way? So occlusal view, and this is the buccal view. So there's a lot of things you can do. So this doctor gave me a call and I needed some assistance with the impression. So as I went to his office, we took the impression and then we evaluated and we looked at the 23 at some bone loss. So what we decided, we made it telescopic coping. So as you can see the x-ray on the 23. So we did a setup for trying, and we did take metrics, buccal and lingual metrics, and we made a screw retain bar, which is called wrapper round bar. So as you can see, this bar is just going to sit over the telescopic coping. So there's no cement and there's no screw in there. It just sits over the telescopic coping. So we gold plate it. I like to gold plate, and this is one of the tricks. You don't want to put opaque because actually opaque separates from the metal, and I'm sure you experienced this, and your acrylic breaks. So we add teeth to the frame, and then we did the wax up. We wax up and process, as you can see, access sole, access sole, access sole, and this one just sits over. And in a way it was good too, because the access sole was going to come out through the facial, so at least this way. And in the future, if you decide to take something's wrong with that implant, you can still remove this, put another implant, and you can still use as a temporary until the implant heals. So it's planning. It's something that you got to keep in mind and work as a team. So this is the final screw retain. So as you can see, it shows a little bit, but it's only on the lingual. So and this is the final restoration in the mouth. Patient is very happy. It's been 6 years, and there's no breakage on the acrylic or teeth. The implant position is deep, but the healing abutment and the impression cope used, they were straight emergence profile. So what I did a quick wax up to see how it was going to be the emergence profile. So we were ridge lapping, which you don't want to see that. So I called the dentist, and the dentist sent patient back to the oral surgeon for treatment of bone and tissue in order to use the flare healing abutment, and the dentist will take another impression using a flare impression coping. So after 2 months, I get the new impression with the flare healing abutment and use that impression coping. As you can see, it totally changed the emergence profile. So this is the ideal emergence profile. You can see, straight up, and that's what you want to look, you're looking for. And this is the ideal crown or edge lab. So abutments, impression copings, and healing abutments. So keep in mind, straight impression copings, they usually use in narrow spaces. Flared impression copings are used for wide space like molars, centrals. So it's important that you take impression and take that in consideration. And these are the most used hacks for engaging abutments. So Nobel, some are Nobel, Straumann. So this is actually called a gold-based UCLA. So anytime you use one of these for a porcelain fused to metal, it's going to be very expensive, your restoration, because we cannot shoot non-precious metal into these because we're going to burn them out. So we have to use semi-precious. So each abutment is about $350 plus the gold that you're going to cast to a semi-precious gold. That it's about $70 a gram. So each crown usually, like let's say if it's a molar, it takes about 7 grams. So it's very expensive. We use the plastic UCLA, and then we can cast non-precious, and it becomes a little bit cheaper. So quick laboratory steps, how to fabricate an implant crown. It's very important to know both sides. So that's why I'm showing you the steps here. So we have an impression coping in place. This is a closed tray. So we remove impression coping from the impression. I recommend for us, let us to do this, or your lab to do this. Don't do it, because if you put it inside and it's in the wrong position, because we use microscopes. And so we screw analog or replica to the impression coping, as you can see here. And we put impression coping and analog back into the impression, making sure, that's why I use the microscope to make sure that that flat side fits right in the end to the impression. And then we add soft tissue. So soft tissue, keep in mind, that's the lab X-ray. We need to see, like we need to remove that soft tissue in order to see if your restoration is fitting properly. So we fabricate the model and articulate the model. So again, here I was using a plastic UCLA. So screw in the UCLA abutment. And then we do a full contour. I did a full contour wax up just to see where the access sole is gonna come out. So of course on this one, it's on the occlusal lingual, so I think I can get away with the screw retain. So this is the lower. I use a hex UCLA for singles. It has to be engaging. Screw retain crowns. So we cut them down according to the opposing. We did a full contour wax up. As you can see, the access sole is right on the occlusal surface, so screw retain crowns is perfect. So we cut back to the contour wax up and we sprue. We position abutments in the ring and invest, and we burn out and cast in the ring. So that's a ring, and this is the actual metal in there. So this is our after the vest and sandblast. So we trim an opaque metal and we apply porcelain and finish. So this is probably one of the most expensive. This crown, if you're using gold UCLAs, this restoration is one is out of the lab with parts included is about $1,000 to $1,200 a crown. So just to give you an idea, so this is what I was showing you before. So it's a it's comparing. So this is a screw retain crown. Actually, the ones I just showed you, we cast and opaque, and so it's all one piece, no cementing bulb. This is a cement retained crown, so it's all kinds of abutments. This actually is that you can mill them, you can anodize them in yellow, and then we make a crown. No access hole, but it's cemented over, so is the scrumentable. So the new one that shows, actually we call scrumentable. So if you hear that name, scrumentable is a combination. So of screw retain and cement retain. So basically, this is probably one of the cheapest restorations, and a lot of doctors are doing this. So it's a titanium abutment. It could be a stock abutment. It could be a milled abutment, but it's titanium. And we scan it, and we do a zirconia crown with access hole. So before we send it out of the lab, we cemented two pieces. So it becomes a screw retain crown. So it just, because that's why the word came, because screw mantable, screw retain, and cement retain. So, but it's, when you get it, it's a screw retain crown. So planning an implant position in the surgical stand. So the angle of implants is very important. So if you look at this, so it's the buccal view, the lingual view, and this is the analog, which represents the implant. So I actually, just took it apart, and the implant was positioned in this position. It's just to show you the angulation of the implants. 5 degrees makes a big difference on the restoration. So if I restore this, the emergence with the lingual side, the emergence profile would be okay. But if I want to restore and on the buccal, so it's going to be like a ridge lap. So let's say if you plan it properly and when the dentist or the oral surgeon and periodontist, if he tilted, so when he started putting that implant, if he brought it just a little bit the angle, a little bit more to the buccal, like, you can see the access hole is coming out through. Just tilt it a little bit to the buccal and then sink the implant a little bit down. And this position, it still does, I don't think would affect the bone. And remember, this is just models, study models that we're going to be using. So and then you can create a nice emergence profile. And that's what we're looking for. We don't want ridge lap because down the road, you're looking for trouble. So, start with the study models. So we wax up a tooth, making sure the neck of the tooth is at the same level as the natural tooth. So make a surgical guide. We remove half of the tooth from the incisal and add open windows on the surgical guide to make sure that it fits. I like to do this, as you can see here, just to make sure your surgical guide is sitting properly. So we use a carbide burr to drill 1.3 millimeters. So I use the surgical guide, I put it on the model, and I drill through the stone model following the long axis to the bone. So we drill to create emergence profile and the height of the implant. So use your model, or you can ask the lab to do this for you. So as you can see here, it just gives you an idea. That's all I'm talking about. It's a pre-planning. So lingual view, so 1 millimeter subgingival at the buccal. So this would be the ideal for us to restore the crown. Depends after, the oral surgeon, the periodontist, but at least you can give them the study model and give them an idea. That's what we're looking for. Teamwork again. So measure how deep you need the position of the implant. So that the implanted level was here, and you measure to the tissue, so it's about 5 millimeters. So measure the width, about 6 millimeters. So actually, you know, in this implant, you just an idea for me would be 3.7 millimeters. Implant would be perfect. So this will help you to decide the size of the implant that you're thinking about, and at least give you an idea. So you can actually, you can take a picture and it's an app that you can download, and you know, and you can do a little bit of drawing and see if you can put 2 teeth, or if you can just a pre-planning. That's what we're looking for. So a few steps to avoid bad placement on implants. So we can use a study model before the surgery. So set up an acrylic tooth, ideal to the final crown. So we wax up lingual plate as a flipper. So we process acrylic and drill a hole, leaving facial of tooth 1 millimeter thick. So pin and base, so you can ask the lab to do this for you. But this is what I was doing, and but you can do it yourself in your office or ask your lab. Pin and base, cut parallel with the long axis of the teeth, so you make that cut. So put back on the model, and then mark the circle here, mark the center. So mark your buccal wall where you want your implants, around here. So you drill right into the center of the hole on the red dot. And this will give you an idea for the implant position. Again, it's just an idea. You can send these models to the oral surgeon or periodontist or yourself, and it just gives you an idea. It's nothing like you can send the patient for a CBT scan, whatever, but this is just study models, pre-planning that. So diagram that will help you decide the size of the implant. So this is like 11, tooth 11. And so as you can see, this 21, you can see the lingual, the buccal. So if you're planning to put an implant at tissue level, you can go with the 6 millimeters. If you're planning to go deeper, 5 millimeters. If you want to go deeper, 4 millimeters. If you want to go deeper, 3 millimeters. Nothing wrong with that. You know, like this, in this area, yeah, you might need to go, but go with the 3, like you have a lot of room. You know, but what happens is, for a challenge for us is to restore an implant at the tissue level with 3 millimeters. So if you have 3 millimeters, I'm going to ridge lap, and you're going to have a tomato on a stick, and you don't want to see that. So bad position for implants. Trying to put an implant too far lingual while trying to make the crown screw retain is a bad idea unless you sink the implant. So if you look at this diagram, so sometimes, you know, okay, let's put the implant further back because I need that access hole on the lingual so I can make screw retain. But what's going to happen, you know, when we fabricate it, we're going to do like a kind of ridge lapping. So sometimes it's not a good idea. I would probably go with implant deeper, shorten implant, and go with access hole coming out through the incisor. Don't worry about this, because these days, most of the companies, implant companies, they have the angulated screw channel. So we can change the access hole about 15 degrees. So keep that in mind. So most common surgical guides. So we mail a surgical guide. This is actually a case that I work with the dentist. So as you can see, I do a lot of diagrams, you know, a lot of drawings and with pencil. So the necks of the teeth are very important, because that's, you know, like take that in consideration. So mark with a pencil, this will help you a lot. Send study model to the periodontist or to the oral surgeon. And as a matter of fact, when we did this case, the periodontist really liked the idea, and we end up with good results. So as you can see, this is the case that we pre-planned. Model is ready for the restoration. So planning is an important key to achieve a good restoration. So so that's the actual case. We use a non-X titanium abutment and a zirconia bridge with access sole, and we cement over the abutments. So this is the final restoration, zirconia screw-mentable. So we do a lot of these restorations, and that, like you're going to see on the slides, that we are doing that, a lot of zirconia screw-mentables. So screw retain not possible to the buccal access hole. So we'll fabricate an high-cost cement retained crown. So zirconia abutment with titanium interfacing. So I know usually these zirconia crowns, they break because there's no support, but what we do is like we get the titanium abutments, we put them in place, we scan them, and then we do the abutment in zirconia, and then we cement it to the burial. Like this is a burial base from Straumann, and so the interfacing is titanium, and inside the channel is support for zirconia. It's titanium. So that's the same case, layer zirconia crown. You can see the crown here. This is a high cost. So this is actually the final case with the mesial space open. So this is a low cost single screw retained crown. So this is again the most common used crown. So it's a titanium abutment, custom abutment. Some companies, you can use non-precious abutments with some companies. Full zirconia crowns, stain and glaze, cemented over the abutment with access sole, called screw-mentable. So here's your titanium abutment, we anodize it, and this is your, actually on this case, the access sole was coming out through the lingual side. So we designed the titanium custom abutment and a full zirconia crown, so crown with access sole. So we use multi-link to cement the crown. So the crown is cemented at the lab and clean the access cement. And the crown is cemented. And this can be done by the doctor. I don't recommend it for you to do it unless you have to. So access cement is clean, and this is easier to do at the lab. And as you can see, it's a very nice crown. And they look, and we actually anodized in yellow. We do that because at least the gray doesn't show through the actual zirconia and doesn't show through the tissue. So here's your final screw-mentable crown with a titanium abutment anodized. Final crown with access sole. So it's time to restore another case. Just to show you that what we get sometimes, and it's a very deep implant, and we need to make a cement retained crown. Access sole is at the buccal. So we used a gold abutment engaging implant fixture, UCLA, and make sure that it's seated. So we place soft tissue and we wax up the abutment. Facial 1 millimeter subgingival lingual tissue level. So we clean the wax up, we check the emergence profile, and the wax up is ready, screw, invest, and cast, and the abutment finished. We did gold plated, and we did a wax up, screw, invest, and cast, the coping, and the final metal coping, some plastic gas and opaque. And we applied porcelain stain and glaze. And this is the final restoration. So this, I would say, is one of the most expensive restorations. So there is another one, custom abutment cast with white gold. So it looks yellow because it's been gold plated. Color is not visible through the tissue. This is a high cost for the patient too. So we gold plated abutment. This is a Nobel. So, and we did a layer zirconia crown over the abutment with lingual access sole without soft tissue. The crown cement, lingual access sole. And this is a Nobel active. As I said that before, so in a central and a white space, we use a 3.0, but this implant was very deep, placed very deeply. So allows it to create a nice emergence profile. And this is the final screw montable restoration. Crown can be cemented by the laboratory dentist, and that's a final case. So this is probably one of the lowest costs. So is a titanium abutment with a full zirconia crown, translucency crown. So you can get it at translucency zirconia or full zirconia without the translucency. So we anodize the abutment. We can change the color. We can make it yellow. We can make it pink. We can make a rose. So we can do that. So the titanium abutment is being anodized. The final cement retained restoration. So this is a low cost translucency zirconia stain and glaze. And it looks pretty good, you know, so no layer of porcelain, it's all zirconia. So this is the final cement retained from the lingual view. So this is actually cases that we get, and I wanted to show you, I think it's important to look at the position that sometimes certain cases and we have to restore that. So the implant position that you don't want to see, tissue level and placed too far lingual. So we restored it with the UCLA. We wax and cast and trim. And this is your final abutment. Ridge lap to the lingual. So, you know, that's all we can do. Yeah, so we can do miracles. And this is the occlusal view. As you can see, like even the screw, it's almost at the level of the crown, but we still restored it. We made we finished it and we made a porcelain fuse to metal the crown over the abutment. This is how it looks like. So this is an ideal position of an implant, 2 millimeters subgingival, and it flares out to the same gingival height of the adjacent teeth. So as you can see, it's a nice emergence profile. And actually is the crown being fabricated, finished. So make sure that you use a flare impression coping for white space. So cement retained bridge. 2 custom abutments. We gold plate the bands. We cement retained bridge over the abutments. We made insertion jigs so the dentist can use them to position the actual abutments in place. As you can see, like that's what he's going to do. He's going to, then it's an opening here that you can put the screw and you can torque the abutments in using the actual jig. So this is the barcode view. Gray does not show through the soft tissue because we use the gold plating. So this is the lingual side. Doctor will temporary cement bridge, and after 3 months, remove bridge and retorque abutments and final cement. I know I'm gonna have questions, but I'll answer you. I don't wanna get into it now, but I think it's something you should do, even with the screw retain crowns. So something that you don't want to see. So super changeable. So actually, you know, we have to restore this. And this is your final screw retain crown. It is possible to restore, but that's what it's going to look like. And some patients don't like that. There's no way we can bring the porcelain and covering that implant. We could do that, but it's not, if you tell us to do, we'll do it, but we won't be responsible. So one more to restore: implant tissue level and implant too narrow. So look at your buccal wall and look at where your implant is. So we can restore like this: no ridge lap, okay? So which will look like this, black triangle, and some patients don't like it. Or we can do this, ridge lap. So which will look like this. It looks nice, but is it ideal? I don't think so. So the best decision is to place the implant in the right position like this one, a wide implant, or sink the implant deeper. How should we restore this case? Should we start restoration? Why not putting 2 implants? So this is one case that we had to restore. So this is your final restoration. That's what we come up with: facial view, lingual view. At least I would recommend to see the patient once a year and recommend the water pick. Be your own judge, and good luck. I don't know what's going to happen down the road. So impressions, let's talk a little bit about impressions, because I'm going to show you some impressions that we get, and we don't want to see that. So a good impression is important to achieve a good restoration. So a full arch and no pools. So something that where we're looking, this is not critical, but we need you to capture the occlusion proper, and we need a balance inside. The working side and balance inside, it's important, even if you're doing a single crown. So do not use, so one of the keys, do not use a lot of a putty, use more impression material. So what happens here, like if I restore this case, you're gonna be calling me and say that my crown is high, because what happens, the putty doesn't capture the occlusion properly. So when we pour this, you're going to end up with a bigger tooth. So my recommendations is use like medium body, dry your impression coping really well, no moist, use light body, and get your assistant to syringe a medium body on the tray. So this is not enough. A bit more is needed. So this is actual impressions that we get, but I think we should, get the full impression. So we need an imprint of posterior teeth. So this is not enough. We need to do excursions. We need to go in protrusive, and it's not, like we can work on it, but you're going to be calling it something wrong, too long, or the excursions, so I don't think it's a good idea. So treatment of soft tissue, use flare healing abutments and impression copings, especially in white space. So if I fabricate a crown on this, you're going to have a tomato on the stick, because if I flare this out, you're not going to be able to put that crown in, because tissue and bone is not ready for flare the emergence profile, for the ideal emergence profile. So I have a question. Most of the doctors, when I take impression, should I join my impression copings together? And I say no, leave them alone, because what happens, most of your impression copings, they engage in. So this represents your implants. This is your impression copings. So material, so what happens, look inside, after you take in the impression, look at what happens. So you pulling that out, and it's touching here, the path of insertion. So what happens inside of the impression, it cracks, and and the impression copings, they won't go back in position. But if you don't join them together, what happens is spreads out, but your impression material is memory. So the impression coping will go back in place. So just to give you an idea. So if the implant is positioned deeply, it's easy to create an emergence profile, no ridge lab. So gold custom abutments with cemented crowns and soft tissue model on patient with a natural teeth study model. So we did take metrics and we fabricate the custom abutments according to the metrics. And we gold plated. And we did temporary crowns. So the gray doesn't show through. Try to make contacts of the natural teeth parallel with implants. So this is your implant. Make sure before you take the impression, you make these contacts parallel with your impression coping. Because if you don't want black triangles, if you take an impression, you send it back to me to close these black triangles, I won't be able to. So some UCLAs have a thread. So what happens is some of these UCLAs, they have a thread inside. The screw doesn't go through. So double check before you call the lab saying that is the wrong screw, because this is your crown and the screw has to go through these threads before it goes into the threads of the implants. So full zirconia. Zirconia layer on the teeth and pink porcelain on the tissue. So this is probably one of the most expensive restorations. I don't recommend it in 4 implants. I know it's done, but I think you should at least have 4, at least 5 or 6. But this is my opinion. So that's the facial view. This is a very high cost for the patient. So this is the side view. And let's talk about mill friction fit bar screw retain locators with a double substructure. So is the friction fit between this frame and here. So which will kind of protect your nylons here. So this pinch is very, very stable. So this restoration is very similar to a screw retain. Lots of retention is easy for the patient to clean because you remove it. This is ideal if the patient needs lip support and you need to ridge lap. So screw retain metal frame with a wraparound acrylic, very similar to the Lino R.D.T. So screw retain, now next abutments, of course, because it's a screw retain. Every time you use screw retain, bridges, no necks, no abutments. So this is the final case. So the doctor wants screw retain, bridge, and 2 single crowns, but the access hole on 12 and 13 will be on the buckle due to the angle of the implants. As you can see, the access hole is coming to the buckle, but the doctor still wanted a screw retain. So it is possible to do things. So I made telescopic copings, highly polished, and I top pin, I can actually top pin threads and put a lingual screws. So the screw retain bridge finished. So 12 and 13 lingual screws, 15 and 16 occlusal screws to the implant fixtures. And here they screw into, so you torque your telescopic copings and then you screw these. These, by the way, no cement involved and it's only hand tighten, not torque. So screw retain with the lingual screws. So 12 and 13 custom with a hex and engaging on 15 and 16 non-engaging, so non-engaging, and here the singles, because the singles they engaging. So custom abutment, telescopic coping. So this thought that the access hole is coming out through the almost the neck. So wanted a screw retain. So I did a telescopic coping. I tap in a lingual screw, and I did a crown screw retain from the lingual side. So no cement involved. So buccal side. So it's good to see, if you're trying to do this, it's good to see the patient at least once a year. So locators. So two locators, they angle, and we need to make them all parallel. So I made two custom abutments with a flat surface. And then I laser weld the locators on the abutments. And so now they all parallel. So temporary bridge and crowns, this is a PMMA, just to let you know that it's an excellent material. And these bridges probably will last, I would say, up to 1 to 2 years. They're so nice that the patient probably want to keep them. So just to give you an idea, so I did these cemented retained crowns, singles. So the doctor, when them splinted, send them back. So as a way to splint it, so we removed some porcelain and I laser weld them. I went with a laser weld and I laser weld them, and I add some opaque and we add some porcelain to it. So there's no need to remake. So with a laser weld, you can do a lot of things. So this is screw retain bridges with telescopic copings and single crowns. So it looks like a mess, but you're gonna see next. So I did actually these on all the interiors, they telescopic copings. You're gonna see next slide, and I did 4 bridges. So these are your telescopic copings. So the access hole was coming through the buckle. So I made them all parallel and I tapped pin occlusal screws. You can see they tapered, tap pin screws, they tapered because if the one, they will hold the bridges in place. And again, you don't need to torque these screws. So the 2 posterior, so actually this bridge screws into the actually telescopic coping. This goes straight into the implant fixture. And these, both bridges, they screw into the telescopic copings. And this is your final case. So mill bars with the removable locators. So we can cast them, or we can get them, send them to Pantera. I can tap them in, and they use like threads here, and they will be, like if these they get worn out, you actually can call me and I'll send the new ones and the tool, and they're very easy to remove and put a new one in, which they do wear out with the time. Special, I'm gonna say this, special if you have locator nylons, so you should change your locator nylons at least once a year. If you don't change the locator nylons, they become like sandpaper and they wear out actually the locators. So make sure that the patient changes the locator nylons once a year. So we wax up a chrome partial over the frame. We cast and finish the chrome partial. It's all metal in this area, the palette. And we cure the housings. And we wax up and we finish case. So just to give you a certain idea, it's a screw retain crown. Doctor wanted a full crown. So the lingual screw is not a problem. The patient didn't want to see any composite. So I made a gold plug with a loop. So this is for you to hold it until you cement that plug. And this is your final result. So perfect position to restore, a good emergence profile and deep. So it's a narrow implant, but it's deep, and you can still create your emergence profile. If you put that implant at tissue level, we'll be in trouble. So these are stock abutments that you can get from the companies. We scan them and we do the zirconia crowns. That's how they look like. This I think is, I don't know what they are, but I think maybe by Horizon, I don't know. But anyway, so these are how they look like. So they line up nicely at the barcode. Zirconia crowns with access hole. And this is the barcode view, nice emergence profile. And as you can see here, and full zirconia allows you to put a plug without becoming gray. So what happens is that when you do porcelain fused to metal, usually the channel comes all the way up. If we do zirconia, we can do at least, the channel is about 3 to 4 millimeters. So when you put your plug, final plug here, you're not gonna see gray as much because it's all porcelain. So Aquapoise applied to implant technology. So Aquapoise back in action. So maybe you want to take this name down and you want to read a little bit about it. It was Dr. Goodman developed Aquapoise system, I think was 1980, 1970, something. So, and I kind of apply this into implants. So 2 screw retain crowns with a C-rest on the mesial. So it's actually the C-rest from Aquapoise. So it's like a guide plane. So Aquapoise C-rest, this is what it looks like that we cast to it on the mesial of the screw retain crowns. So this is the wax up. That's what it looks like, your C-rest. So we made a partial with E-class. So this is the mill that goes into the C-rest with a back action clasp. So this is your partial on the bottom. And this is your final work. So back action. So as you can see, no barcode clasp. Very stable and maintenance free. So Aquapoise burst locators over dentures. So 2 locators over the frame, lots of maintenance required, very bulky as a pallet and not very stable. And like you will probably need to change the nylons again, every 6 months to a year. So 2 screw retain crowns with Aquapoise design. So if you read on the bottom, preservation of implants, the Aquapoise clasp unit will, during function, direct all force along the long axis of the crown. During function, only the C-rest is in contact with the crown. The magnitude of the vertical force on the crown will be the same as the binding force on the denture base. No magnified vertical force on the crown will protect or preserve or strengthen the implant. So what it means is even if with the binding forces here, is not going to put any torque or stress on the implant, because actually the C-rest, the walls, the female that goes here is tapered on the bottom. So allows, it's resilient, and allows for the denture to move up into the tissue without putting any torque. So it's a very nice design. So how to remove dental implants, broken screws with a shawl kit. It's a kit, two drivers that we develop and we sell as a kit. I think they're about $100. And So I'm going to play a small video. This is analog that represents your implant. So you got two sides. So we have one for the 3.0 shafts. This is actually a shaft. The head of the screw is broken and is inside. It's inside of the analog. So now what we're trying to do is to adjust, spread those wings so they goes in between the threads of the implant and between the shaft. So, and that's what it does. So this is the shaft of a broken screw. So it doesn't have the head of the screw. So we can put it back in. That was the tri-lobe Nobel. This is a BioHorizon external. Actually, see, that's the head of the screw. Or you actually can turn, actually you can put it in or you can remove it. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next slide and we'll be actually a dentist doing this. So the doctor wanted to remove this crown, was a screwy-thin crown because the porcelain would fracture. But when he tried to remove it, the screw head was stripped. So what I told them, you gotta go through the channel, drill the head of the screw, and as soon as you drill the head of the screw, and then your crown will come off. And then your shaft, that's when that tool goes in and removes the shaft. So I'm gonna play it for you. Like he's drilling through the access hole and he's removing the head of the screw because it's stripped. It's a short video, but so the next slide. So after you remove that, the screw, of course, is the crown comes off because it's the head of the screw that holds the crown in place on that platform. So what we're going to end up is actually your implant, and then you end up with a shaft on the bottom. So the challenge is actually to remove that shaft, because the more you try to remove it, even with the irrigation, sometimes it goes even deeper. So the doctor engaged that tool. So just a short video, it's engaged the shaft. And as you can see, the tool is grabbing the shaft of the screw, as you can see here. And then it turns counterclockwise to remove the screw. And here is your broken screw, and it takes seconds, and the shaft is removed. So this you might want to keep in mind, especially if you're stripping the screws, like you can remove the screw, or if the screw breaks and you end up with a shaft in there.
So I'm gonna get to questions and answers here. Bear with me. I will read the questions for you. So we have a question on a slide 29. If you have to go back, but if you probably remember that, what are the disadvantages of non-precious metals clinically?
So it's, okay, it's no difference. So let's put it this way. These days, the metals, like in the olden days, if you asked me to use non-precious, I would say probably no, stick with the semi-precious. But these days, the metals are so good, even non-precious, because, the old non-precious, they're brilliant. These days, no brilliant. So I don't see any necessary to use a semi-precious metal. So if by all means, if you want to use non-precious and keep your costs down, I don't see the problem. So even titanium abutments probably for me is one of the best metals, that you can use. So design titanium abutments. And So I don't know. So about chrome cobalt, I know some companies they use chrome cobalt. You know, it's not my, but you can, you know, it still works fine. So I think you're okay. I don't see any preference. You know, so if, it's all about cost. You know, and if you have to adjust the crown, of course, if you're doing on precious or some adjustments on a metal, you know. Okay, let me go back into the, what slide was it?
It was a slide number 29.
29. Okay, just let me go back to it. Give me a second. Okay, so, okay. So give me a second. So on these here, I would say, like if you want to save money, I probably will go with a plastic UCLA. But the problem with the plastic UCLAs, it's most of the companies, implant companies, they don't make plastic UCLAs. So they only make gold UCLAs. So you gotta let us know which company is it, implant company, and you know, if they have plastic UCLAs, and then I would recommend go with non-precious, save your money. Why are you going paying $350 if you don't have to? So it's actually, you know, so that's your preference choice, okay?
Thank you. Just one thing for everybody. Al loves solving problems, and it doesn't matter if you're our customers or not. Give us a call. If you want to talk to Al, he will answer your questions. So thank you, Amanda, for acknowledging it. Can I get a copy of the webinar? Is it going to be emailed out? Sometime tomorrow, we will email a link to everybody who registered for the webinar, and it will be active for 7 days. You can watch the video again. We have a question. How do you think of Emax and tie-based implant crown? How do you think of Emax plus tie-based implant crown?
I personally, so let me answer you that. So it's nothing wrong with that, using an Emax crown and with a tie base with titanium abutment, but keep in consideration if when you're doing screw retain, so I don't know if you're talking about a cement or screw retain, the screw-montable. So if you're using an Emax crown, remember the Emax crown is a lot weaker. So if you're doing a screw retain and you're putting an access hole on that crown, it's going to become weaker. So your mesial and distal walls. So what happens is, I would say probably, like say if it's a molar, it's fine, the Emax crown. If it's a central, a big central, you have a white space between your tie base and the natural tooth, by all means, you can use Emax. But if you're doing, like, let's say a lateral and you're putting a tie base there, and I won't recommend you the Emax. I would go with full zirconia. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Al. Question we have from Dr. Shakib. Please explain telescopic abutment technique once again. Thanks.
So actually, the telescopic coping, so the way it's done is I use one of these abutments, okay? And like say I'm using, like I'm gonna put you this, okay, this slide. So I'm gonna be using that let's say this plastic UCLA. I'm gonna wax it up, and then I'm gonna make it turn it into a cast it and turn it into a telescopic coping. So the telescopic coping is a coping that doesn't involve cement. It's highly polished, is tapered, and then the crown fits like a friction fit. So basic, that's that's why it's called telescopic coping, because it's highly polished and the crown just sits over. And if I put an occlusal screw, you know, the screw is gonna, so it's that friction, as the friction of the crown, and as the screw, the small screw on top of that crown. And that's why it's good in a way to see the patient once a year. So basic, that's what the telescopic coping does.
All right. My favorite question, actually, I asked Al about the screw-montable. I believe it's a term invented by Al, but can you go over the difference between screw-retained and screw-montable crowns?
So let me go back into the slide and I'll show you in a second. So let me share this, the slide. So the screw-montable, the screw-retained, it's all to do with the price. So the screw-retained, this crown, I'm gonna give you just numbers of that. I gotta use, in order to use a screw-retained, this is gonna cost you, because we're using gold UCLA, the center facing, which is about $350. You paying, like say this crown, you would be paying for the semi-precious crown, you would be paying about, I would say $500. So this crown one out of the lab would be about $1,200. So it's no cement involved between, it's all one solid piece, okay? So, and as the access sole, but the screw-montable is the titanium abutment. This crown, when it goes out of the lab, it's about $600 with parts. So you're saving a lot of money. So the only thing, the difference is cement these two pieces. But we cement it, no use. So when you get the crown, this crown is gonna look like this. It's gonna look like the screw retain as the access sole, and you can torque it down without no problem. I don't recommend you to use a screw-montable if it's a very, like the occlusal space, it doesn't have, is not very long. And then your abutment, if it's the abutment is really short, and then the cement is not enough cement, and because the abutment cement, so after a while, maybe the crown will come off. Okay, so that's pretty well.
Thank you, Al.
Next.
Do you, question here, do you have idea on removing the implant itself?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Do you have any idea on removing the implant itself?
Removing the implant?
Yeah, the implant.
Are they talking about the screw?
The screw in the mouth, in the bone.
How to remove the screw? I didn't get the question.
How, do you have any idea about removing the implant that a doctor has placed in the bone?
No, that I don't know. I don't.
That's a good question. All right.
Yeah, that's more for a dentist, you know. Even if I knew, I didn't want to tell you because I don't want to get involved. So, yes, go ahead.
So, when you say put implants deep for emergence, do you mean below crest of the bone or just 2-3 below gingival margin?
So usually I would say for an ideal in the molar, I would say 2 millimeters below below gingival margin. That's the ideal crown from the tissue level. Okay, so 2 millimeters, I think would be ideal. Unless the implant, if the implant is very like in a molar area, and then you're using a 3.0 implant, and then you gotta go even, you know, bone level, even less than bone level, you know. So, and then you're gonna have to trim the bone a little bit and create emergence profile on the bone. So if you plan to use a narrow implant in a wide space. Okay, go ahead, next.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Kwan asks, on slide 127, why do you recommend to temporarily cement the bridge and then bring back to retort and then permanently cement?
Yes, I knew that question was coming, and I was waiting for that question. So let me tell you, let me go a little bit about, let's go to the screw retain, okay, the screw retain crown. Yes, let me put the slide. It was the 20s. Which slide was it, Ali?
The slide, let me just go back and see.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't think they need the slide. So let me answer the question. Oh, so I know where, I think the slide, give me a second.
127.
Can you tell me the slide number, Ali?
127.
127. Give me a second.
127.
Got it. And I'll go in. So give me a second. So anyway, I'm having a hard time to get it. Okay, so I think I got the slide in. I need to get that slide in. So what happens is, let me talk a little bit about it. So let's go to the screw retain. So what happens is you have a screw retain crown, and I always tell the dentist that I deal with to retort. So what happens is, let's say the screw retain crown is at 30, they recommend 35 newtons of a centimeter to torque. So you torquing, okay? So you work on your contacts, you work and your contacts you think is perfect. So when they say 35 newtons, that torque is supposed to be in the platform between the implant and your crown. So what happens, the initial, it's not 35. So down the road, you're gonna lose at least 5 newtons because you got tissue, you got bone, and you got contacts. So your contacts, the patient feels pressure. So yeah, you got 35 newtons, but down the road, after 1 month, if you go in, you lose 5, you will be at 30. I guarantee you that, because your contacts are tight. Natural tooth will move. So what's going to happen? Tissue is putting pressure. Metal fatigues, your seating fatigues. So if you go and change the tires, the wheels in the car, now they call you in to go for a retort. So metal fatigues. So what happens down the road? You're gonna have screws loose because your torque is not actually 35. It's gonna be 30 or less. Patient these days, they use toothbrushes. So they put a lot of vibration into, so what happens? That screw is gonna start coming up. And then if you do a cemented bridge, you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna have to cut that bridge. So my recommendation in a cement retain, you torque your abutments and you put a lot of Vaseline on the abutments. You put a lot of Vaseline on the copings, on the bridge, and then use a little bit of temporary cement and tell the patient, be careful. And at least a month, I will get the patient remove that bridge and retort them. You don't have to do that, but if you have issues with broken screws and screws becoming loose, I would recommend you to do that. So all the dentists that work with me and they do that, they solve that problem. So I hope I answered your question, and I hope that you do that, because I think it's gonna, if you have broken screws or loose screws, that's gonna help you.
Thank you, Al. We have one last question, unless more question comes in. Dr. Shakib asks, sorry, I don't recall the side number. The screw was tapped in a right angle to lingual surface. Can you explain the technique? Are there 2 separated screws on one implant?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. I think it might be the one, the lateral. I can try to go to, but I don't think. So what happens is, the access sole was coming out through the facial, almost at the neck. So the doctor wanted a screw retain. So I used a plastic UCLA, and I made a custom abutment, which is like highly polished, which is called telescopic coping. And I brought it in lingual. And then what I did, I tap in, I drilled through the lingual side, and I create threads, and there's a secondary screw. So you do torque that abutment, the telescopic coping on into the implant, and then the crown was made and is screw in from the lingual, and it's a tapered screw that holds the crown in place and no cement involved. So what you're gonna have to do, and there's no torque on the secondary screw, it's just finger tighten and no cement, like you don't see the cement. That screw is exposed on the lingual side. So, the only thing you might want to see the patient, you know, once a year, but remember that crown is almost like friction fit, you know, it just has a secondary screw on the lingual.
All right. Thank you so much, Al. A couple of things before we leave. First of all, again, thank you, Al. It was very engaging. We still have majority of the people, almost everybody engaged and online. Couple of things. We had a webinar 2 weeks ago on perfect smile clear aligners. It's a line of clear aligners that we make 100% design and manufacturing in Canada. We're going to have a YouTube version of the webinar posted on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ShawLabGroup. Please subscribe to that channel and you will have the video soon showing up. The second thing that I wanted to mention before everybody leaves is that we are going to have a webinar 3 weeks from today, July 9th, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, on digital dentures. We are the first Ontario-based group of dental lab that is printing Lucetone by Dent Supply Sirona on our carbon printer. Digital dentures are amazing. Instead of having 5 visits to the clinic, with 2 visits, you can have an amazing digital denture for your patient at a better cost. I think everybody likes less visit to the dental offices and get the services because of the coronavirus. Again, thank you so much. We have more thank you coming. Hope to see you all soon and stay safe. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.